In a few rare places on Earth, nature has done something almost unbelievable. Instead of erasing the past, it locked entire creatures away in astonishing detail. Skin, armor, even full body shapes preserved after millions of years. How did time destroy almost everything, yet spare these? From a dinosaur whose real skin still clings to its body, to a tiny prehistoric embryo curled inside its egg, these are 9 incredibly well-preserved prehistoric fossil discoveries. Number 9. Borealopelta markmicheli. In 2011, heavy equipment operator Sean Funk was working at the Suncor Millennium Mine north of Fort McMurray, Alberta, when he hit something no one expected to see there. That site usually gave up sea life, not a land dinosaur. At first, museum staff even thought it might be a marine reptile. Then the rock opened up and there it was. A low, broad, armored animal still rising out of the stone with real body shape, like it had been pressed into the earth and locked there before it could fully disappear. What made this find so wild was not just that it was a dinosaur, it was how much of the dinosaur was still there. This was not a pile of loose bones. Huge parts of the body were still covered by skin and armor in their natural place. The armor had not been scattered. The skin had not flattened into a thin stain. The whole animal still had height, width, and weight to it. It looked more like a body turned to stone than a fossil. That happened because the carcass was swept out to sea soon after death and sank onto the seafloor upside down, where it was buried quickly in marine sediment before scavengers and decay could destroy its shape. The species was officially named Borealopelta markmicheli in 2017, and the second part of the name honored Mark Mitchell, the museum worker who spent more than 7,000 hours cleaning it out of the rock. And the way it looks is exactly why people cannot stop staring at it. The head is blunt and heavy, like a shield built for smashing through danger. The neck still looks thick. The shoulders are huge. Across the back, rows of armor rise out of the hide like stone plates, and the shoulder spikes shoot out to the sides like long spears. The skin is tight, scaly, and close to the body, not soft or sagging, which makes the whole thing feel real in a way most dinosaur fossils never do. Researchers even found signs that its upper body was reddish-brown, while the underside was lighter. That color pattern likely helped it blend in from above and below, which means even a tank-like dinosaur like this still had reason to hide. Then came the part that pushed this fossil even further. Scientists studied the stomach area and found its last meal. It had eaten mostly ferns, along with a little stems and twigs, swallowed stones, and bits of charcoal, which suggests it had been feeding in an area that had burned not long before. The plant clues also suggest it died around late spring to early summer, and other evidence points to it being swept out to sea soon after death, where mud sealed it away. Number 8. Dorset pliosaur skull. The Dorset pliosaur skull did not come out of the ground in neat pieces. It had to be pulled from a cliff. High above the beach on England's Jurassic coast, a giant head from a sea killer was still locked inside the rock, and getting it out took a careful cliff rescue, not a normal fossil dig. When it finally came free, the result was staggering. This was a skull just under 6 feet 6 inches long and about 2 feet wide, with both jaws still there, about 130 teeth still in place, and even part of the spine still attached. It looked less like a broken fossil and more like the front end of a real animal caught in stone before time could tear it apart. One big reason it survived so well is that it lay in the Kimmeridge clay, a fine marine mud that is famous for preserving fossils in great detail. Bottom waters there were often low in oxygen, which slowed decay, while minerals moving through the mud gradually helped lock the skull into the rock. The story began when fossil hunter Philip Jacobs found the tip of the snout on the beach in April of 2022. That told experts the rest of the skull had to be nearby, and they traced it back to the cliff above. In August of 2022, a team led by Steve Etches carried out the recovery before more of it could be lost to the sea and weather. The skull was later cleaned and restored over about 10 months, then put on display in Dorset. By 2023 and 2024, It had become one of the biggest fossil stories in Britain, and Guinness gave it the record for the most complete pliosaur skull, saying it was about 95% intact by surface area. What makes this skull so gripping is the way it still holds its killing shape. The snout is long and narrow, not blunt, built more like a precision weapon than a crushing block. The upper and lower jaws are still meshed together, which means the mouth still shows the bite pattern this animal used in life. The teeth are thick, pointed, and slightly curved, jutting out like a cage of daggers. Some are especially large near the front, which makes the whole skull look armed from nose to throat. And because some of the spine bones came with it, the find feels even more complete. It is not just a head. It is the front end of a giant sea hunter still holding together after about 155 million years. A skull this complete lets scientists study how the jaws fit together, how the head was built, and how an animal like this actually hunted in a way scattered bones never could. Number 7. Yutyrannus huali. For years, people could accept feathers on small, odd-looking dinosaurs, but a big meat-eater covered in them felt like a different story. That changed with Yutyrannus huali, a name that means beautiful feathered tyrant. And the name fits. This was not some little fuzzy animal the size of a dog. It was a large predator from the tyrannosaur family line, and it came with direct proof that feathers were part of its body. That alone changed the picture. Suddenly, the old image of every large predatory dinosaur as a bare, scaly monster started to crack. Scientists reported Yutyrannus in 2012 from the Yingliang Formation in Liaoning, China. What made the discovery especially strong was the number of fossils. This was not based on one poor fragment or one messy skeleton. The species was described from 3 nearly complete skeletons from 2 growth stages, which gave researchers much more confidence that the feather traces were real and belonged to the animal itself. Its feathers survived because these animals were buried in the same northeastern China deposits that produced the famous J-hole fossils, where fine volcanic material and lake sediments could cover bodies quickly and protect delicate details. The largest known specimen was about 30 feet long and had an estimated body mass of about 3,100 pounds, making it the largest dinosaur then known with direct feather evidence. And the body is what makes this animal so unforgettable. Yutyrannus had the shape of a true theropod predator. A large head, strong jaws, long legs, a heavy body, and the kind of build that tells you it was made to hunt. But instead of naked reptile skin, this animal carried a coat of long, simple feathers. The feather traces were found on major parts of the body, including the neck, arms, pelvis, tail, and feet. These were not flight feathers. They were more like long filaments, giving the animal a shaggy, fuzzy look across much of its body. Scientists have suggested that those feathers may have helped with warmth, and they may also have played some role in display, though the exact use is still uncertain. Number 6. Spinosaurus aegyptiacus. Spinosaurus aegyptiacus has one of the wildest stories in all of dinosaur history. In 1915, German paleontologist Ernst Stromer described it from fossils found in Egypt's Bahariya oasis. Even from those first bones, it already looked strange. Its back vertebrae carried huge spines, and its teeth were long, smooth, and more like a crocodile's than the blade-like teeth people expected from a giant meat-eating dinosaur. It was clearly big, clearly dangerous, and clearly different. Then the story was almost cut in half. In 1944, during the bombing of Munich in the Second World War, the original Spinosaurus fossils were destroyed. After that, one of the most famous predators in prehistory became almost ghost-like. Scientists still had Stromer's drawings, notes, and old photos, but the actual bones were gone. For decades, Spinosaurus was a giant name attached to a giant question mark. The comeback began in Morocco, in the fossil-rich Kem beds. There, new remains started to bring the animal back into focus. The real turning point came in 2014, when Nizar Ibrahim and his team published a major reconstruction built from a partial skeleton from Morocco, older Moroccan fossils, and Stromer's surviving records from Egypt. For the first time in many decades, Spinosaurus had a body plan grounded in real matching material instead of mostly guesswork, and the body that emerged was shocking. The digital reconstruction measured over 49 feet long, making it longer than many Tyrannosaurus specimens. But raw size was only part of the story. This animal did not look built like a normal giant land predator. The neck and trunk were long. The hips were reduced. The hind legs were much shorter than people had expected. The limb bones were dense and solid instead of hollow in the usual theropod way. Even before the next big fossil surprise, Spinosaurus already looked like a giant hunter that did not fully belong on dry land. The head made that feeling even stronger. The skull was long, narrow, and crocodile-like, with straight, cone-shaped teeth built more for gripping prey than slicing it apart. Near the front of the snout were many small openings that resembled the pressure-sensing structures seen in crocodiles today, the kind that help detect movement in water. The fleshy nostrils sat far back on the skull instead of near the tip of the snout, which would have helped keep water out while the front of the head was submerged. Then there was the sail, the feature that made Spinosaurus famous long before most people knew anything else about it. Tall spines rose from the back to form a huge wall of bone and skin, giving the animal a profile unlike any other predator on Earth. Scientists have suggested that the sail may have been used for display, making the animal look even more massive in life. But for all its fame, the sail was only one part of the puzzle. The rest of the body kept pointing in the same direction, toward the water. That picture became even harder to ignore in 2020. More fossils from Morocco revealed a tail unlike the narrow balancing tails of typical land-running theropods. This one was deep, tall, flexible, and shaped more like a broad paddle or fin. Tests on models showed that it could push through water far better than the tails of ordinary land dinosaurs. Suddenly, Spinosaurus was no longer just a weird predator that stood near rivers and grabbed fish from the shore. It looked like an animal built to move through the water itself. Its short, strong legs, dense bones, and strange body proportions fit that idea. So did its low, flat-bottomed foot claws, which matched the growing picture of a dinosaur adapted for life in and around rivers. Number 5. Sarcosuchus imperator. Today, the Sahara feels dry, empty, and punishing. But when Sarcosuchus imperator was alive, that same part of Africa was cut by huge rivers and wetlands rich with fish, turtles, dinosaurs, and other prey. It was a world built for ambush, and one of its worst killers was this giant crocodile relative. In 2001, new fossils described by Paul Serino and his team gave scientists a much clearer look at this animal's body, growth, size, and place in crocodile history. That mattered because Sarcosuchus had been known before, but these fossils turned it from a giant rumor into a far more complete animal. Based on those finds, Sarcosuchus was one of the largest crocodile relatives ever found, reaching about 40 feet in length. Growth studies tied to the fossil armor on its body suggested that it kept growing for decades and may have spent around 50 to 60 years reaching full size. That is part of what made it so frightening. It did not become huge through a brief burst. It kept building in size year after year until it turned into something far beyond a modern crocodile. And the head is where the horror really comes together. This was not just a big crocodile skull. The snout was long and heavy, with a swollen bump at the front and jaws lined with stout, smooth teeth. Those teeth did not lock neatly together the way many people might expect. Instead, they were built for grabbing and holding large, struggling prey. The mouth carried more than 100 teeth, and the upper jaw was longer than the lower one, giving the animal a deep, ugly overbite that made the whole head look even more dangerous. Its body was long, low, and armored with bony plates, built for river life and sudden violence. You can picture it sitting almost still at the edge of the water, barely moving, then exploding forward when something stepped too close. In a calm river world, this thing would have turned the shoreline into a death trap. The jaw shape and tooth design suggest it was not living on little fish alone. Scientists concluded that it had a more general diet that included large vertebrates, including fish and even dinosaurs. So this was not just a scaled giant drifting through the water, it was a true top hunter. Number 4. The Frankfurt Psittacosaurus. The Frankfurt Psittacosaurus may be small, but it is one of the most important dinosaur fossils ever found. This is the kind of fossil that makes you stop and stare, because it does not just give you bones, it gives you the outside of the animal. Researchers have called this specimen SMFR 4970, and it preserves an unmatched amount of body covering, including some of the best scaly skin ever found on a dinosaur. This fossil comes from the early Cretaceous rocks of China and now sits in Frankfurt. What makes it so different from most skin fossils is that the preserved skin is not just a few lucky scraps. The covering runs across the head, the limbs, the body, and the tail. That gave scientists the rare chance to study how different parts of a dinosaur's skin actually changed from one body region to another. Instead of a generic outer layer, this animal had a body covered in different scale patterns, each part shaped for its own job and place. Psittacosaurus had a short, deep skull with a parrot-like beak, a compact body, strong back legs, shorter front legs, and a long tail. Along that tail, stiff, bristle-like structures rose from the top, giving the back end a look no one would expect from a small, plant-eating dinosaur. The face was even more striking because this specimen preserved a keratin-covered jugal horn, which made the side of the head feel less like bare bone and more like a real living face. Then the skin details make it even better. The scales are not all the same. There are different textures on the shoulders, the belly, the feet, and the tail, so the whole animal feels designed instead of plain. Then come the details that make this fossil unforgettable. This is the only dinosaur known to preserve both a cloaca and an umbilical scar. The cloacal opening runs lengthwise and resembles the condition seen in crocodilians. The umbilical scar is, in simple terms, a dinosaur belly button. Those are the kinds of details almost nobody expects a fossil to keep. And then there is the color. Studies of the preserved pigment patterns showed a darker upper body and a lighter underside, a form of countershading that likely helped the animal blend into a forest with soft, broken light. Number 3. The South African Lystrosaurus mummies. When the end Permian mass extinction tore through life on Earth, whole ecosystems collapsed. In the harsh stretch that followed, Lystrosaurus became one of the few land animals to survive and spread in large numbers across the ruined landscape. That alone gives these fossils weight. But the South African finds go even further. They do not just show survivors. They show bodies. In the Katberg Formation of the Karoo Basin, researchers described Lystrosaurus fossils preserved with signs of mummified skin and strange, outstretched death poses that make their final moments feel painfully clear. These remains come from the early Triassic, just after that extinction, and they matter because they preserve more than bone. At sites such as Ferrydale, researchers logged hundreds of fossils, including clusters of articulated Lystrosaurus skeletons. Some were found lying flat on their bellies, while others were spread out with their limbs thrown wide. 2 specimens showed possible mummified skin, including a foot with a rough, warty outer surface. They are not just ancient skeletons. They are dried-out bodies holding onto traces of their outer covering. Lystrosaurus was squat, heavy, and low-built, with a broad body, strong forelimbs, a short neck, and a blunt, shovel-shaped snout. It had a horny beak at the front of the mouth and a pair of tusk-like teeth in the upper jaw. It did not look sleek or graceful. It looked tough, stubborn, and built to push through hard ground and bad times. The preserved skin does not look smooth and shiny. It looks wrinkled, rough, and dried tight against the body. The kind of skin that makes the carcasses feel less like fossils and more like animals that lost moisture fast under a brutal sun. Then there are the body positions, limbs stretched outward, bodies flattened into red sediment, groups of young animals lying close together as if they had gathered near the last scraps of water and food and then simply dropped where they stood. Bone studies showed the animals in these clusters were juveniles or early subadults. which makes the scene even harsher. These fossils are not just important because skin survived. They matter because they preserve a disaster scene in stone. Survivors of the worst extinction in Earth's history still struggling in a world that had not recovered. Number 2. Dakota the Edmontosaurus mummy. Dakota became famous for something far stranger than a complete dinosaur skeleton. What made this fossil stand out was the skin. When people first saw it, they were not looking at clean bones laid out in rock. They were looking at dark, dried-looking hide still pulled tight around parts of the body, almost like the animal had been wrapped in its own skin and then turned to stone. It is one of the most famous dinosaur mummies ever found, and the first look at it is honestly a little unsettling. Instead of a full, fleshy body, Dakota looks shrunken and drained, with the skin clinging close to the bones like a dry shell left behind after the rest of the body was gone. The story started in 1999 when Tyler Lyson, then a teenager, found the fossil in Hell Creek Rocks near Marmarth, North Dakota. Years later, the specimen was prepared in greater detail, and in 2008, it reached the North Dakota Geological Survey, where workers uncovered even more of what made it special. Large areas of real skin had survived. The fossil also preserved a broad nail on the end of the front hand, which gave that hand a much more real, living look than a normal set of finger bones ever could. That one detail alone makes the animal feel less like a skeleton in a textbook and more like a body that once moved, leaned, and pressed its weight into the ground. And the skin is the part people remember. It is not just a flat mark in stone, it still shows texture. Across the body, the surface looks like a patchwork of small scales and wrinkles, the kind of detail that makes you feel like you could almost reach out and touch it. The skin lies so close to the bones that the whole fossil has that strange deflated look, as if the inside slowly disappeared, and the outer layer collapsed inward. Parts of the fossil also carry damage from scavengers. There are marks on the body and skin that show this dinosaur was fed on before it was finally buried. So Dakota is not just a dinosaur fossil, it is a full death scene, frozen at a point between life and deep time. That is also why Dakota mattered so much to paleontology. For a long time, many people thought dinosaur mummies like this had to be buried very fast, almost right away, to save their skin. Dakota helped shake that idea. Researchers argued that scavengers may have actually helped the process by opening the body and letting fluids and gases escape. That let the tougher skin dry out and stay in place long enough to survive burial and fossilization. Number 1. Baby Yingliang. A lot of fossils show life after it was already over. This one shows a life that never really began. Baby Yingliang is a dinosaur still inside the egg, preserved so well that its last body position can still be read almost like a paused frame from life. What makes it so powerful is how small and personal it feels. This is not a giant skull or a huge skeleton spread across rock. It is a tiny, unborn animal curled into itself, with its body packed so tightly inside the shell that you can almost feel the pressure of that cramped space. The bones are not scattered. They are still arranged in a clear, natural way, as if this little dinosaur was only moments away from breaking out into the world. The fossil comes from the late Cretaceous Heku Formation in southern China, and researchers identified it as an oviraptorid embryo. The preserved skeleton is one of the most complete non-bird dinosaur embryos ever found. The egg itself is about 6 3/4 inches long and about 3 inches wide, while the embryo inside measures about 9 1/4 inches from the front of the skull to the last preserved tailbones. The pose is the real star here. The skull is tucked low beneath the body instead of being thrown backward or broken out of place. The neck follows the line of the head, and the spine curves through the egg in a smooth bend instead of looking crushed or twisted. The legs are folded on either side of the head, turning the whole embryo into a compact knot of bones. Even the back appears positioned toward the blunt end of the egg, with a small open space there that may have been the air cell. All of that matters because the body does not look like it was jammed into place after death. It looks arranged for hatching. And because this animal was an oviraptorid, one should not picture a baby lizard. They should picture a small feathered dinosaur with a short, toothless, bird-like skull, already showing a body plan that feels familiar. Researchers argued that its posture matches an early form of tucking, the body movement modern birds use before hatching. In other words, this little dinosaur may have been going through a behavior that still exists in birds today. That pushes one more bird-like trait deep into dinosaur history. Thanks for watching. Now check out the videos popping up on screen for more unbelievable stories.